Terence McKenna once said it best, that science asks of you one miracle. That's the Big Bang.
Yeah.
There's one miracle. It really is kind of like a miracle.
Yeah.
If in the beginning there was nothing, and then God created the earth and the skies. And it's essentially what the Bible is trying to say. They're just doing it in a way.
And the Bible got it right. They got the order right.
Right.
You know?
I think it's based on an understanding that people had achieved. Because if you think about the Bible, right, and if all these people are correct about the original history of sophisticated civilization, if the Randall Carlsons and the Graham Hancocks and the Robert Shocks of the world and the John Anthony West, if they're correct in the timeline of, like, say, the most sophisticated society that we are aware of, which is Africa, if those people that lived in Africa 30,000, 40,000 years ago in Egypt, if they created a society that was infinitely more sophisticated than anything that we had ever seen before, like, how did they do that? Who did that? And what was that like? Like, what the fuck was that like? What was that world like back then? I mean, have you ever really stopped and tried to think and imagine what was that world like back then? I mean,
well, how about that you have a similar world in Central and South America where they also had built things many thousands of years ago that still, like, how the fuck did you do that?
Yeah. How'd you do that?
Easter Island. How did y'all make those things?
Yeah.
How in the world? And then move them?
Well, I think if those things go down and then people have to rebuild, I think it takes a long time before people figure out what happened. I think it takes a long time. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion that you see in the Bible comes from. Like, God made the earth and the sky and everything in like 6 days, right? And then on the 6th day, he rested. Okay. What are they actually saying, though? You're getting things that are translated from an oral history of 1,000 years, and then they're writing it down in Aramaic, they're writing it down in ancient Hebrew, and you're getting it many, 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 many years later, long after.
Diluted and warped.
All kinds of. Think about what people are willing to do today to the Constitution. Today. With all the information that we have about the dangers of this, think about what they're trying to do today. Now imagine what you would do if you had the real knowledge of the birth of the solar system, of the development of human beings, and the God energy of the universe, and you tried to translate it over an oral history because there's chaos, because there's no more cities anymore, and everyone's dead, and you're just like hunting and gathering as cave people, and you're trying to relay this origin story of mankind. And then it gets written down in parables, and it gets written down in Latin, and it gets translated over the years. And then people try, okay, then they sit down and they look at it many years later and they go, what the fuck were they trying to say? Like, what were they trying to say? Because so much of what they're trying to say, if you're really paying attention, like, it seems like it's kind of laid out like the origins of the universe. If in the beginning there was nothing.
Yeah.
Like, they're talking about the Big Bang. If these scientists all agree, how did they know that
then
back
there was
then?
light. That would be the Big Bang.
Why wouldn't they assume back then that God was always around? Why would they assume that God had to make everything? Why would they assume that there was a beginning and an end just because they have a beginning and an end? Is that rational? Why would they assume that? And why did everybody assume that? Maybe because they fucking knew. Maybe because at one point in time, whether it's 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, they had figured a lot of this shit out.
Well, someone figured something out for the pyramids and the way that they were built to be aligned so perfectly with a true north. And
just to be able to construct them. If those people were that smart, why wouldn't we imagine they had an understanding of the birth of the universe? Why wouldn't we imagine that they would have this bizarre understanding of the way morality and good and evil play out with human beings? Yeah. Maybe they were right. Maybe they were right, but it all just got fucked up over the thousands of years after asteroid impacts and the thousands of years of the destruction of the advanced civilizations and the world going back into chaos and then slowly rebuilding. And you're rebuilding with these ancient texts that you find in clay pots in Qumran. And you ever seen when they translate like the Dead Sea Scrolls and they lay them out and they have to try to figure out which pieces go with which scroll, and they do it based on DNA. All this DNA is from this cow, so let's take this scroll from this cow skin and put it together and try to read what the fuck they said. It's incredible. But it makes sense. It makes sense if you buy into the idea that there's been a restart of civilization. And then you go back and say, okay, what is the history of the Bible? Like, how old is it? What's the oldest version? Like, what's the oldest version of the stories?
Version. Like, who knows?
Right,
the
right.
oral
Who knows?
version.
Right. What was the original? Like, you're playing a game of Telegram, right, or telephone with over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
With who knows how many people. But if we've seen what the Egyptian people were able to build, what was that like? How sophisticated were they? And maybe what we're getting at in the Bible is just the longest game of telephone of a true story. It's just all kind of gumbled up in stories, and God's testing you and all this thing about, God telling this guy to kill his kid. Mate, it's just a little screwed up. But it's showing you that there are evil forces at play, and there are temptations.
It's
and you must
digestible
resist
lessons
those. Yes.
in a story that you can understand.
Exactly.
And
But
that's
at the
why
heart of
7
it, there's
days,
some truth to it.
Because what is a day to God?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Is that a billion years?
Yeah.
1,000,000 years?
100 billion?
Who knows?
Who fucking knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But it's presented in a way that you can digest it.
Yes. And then our version of it is this simplified, uneducated, barbaric version that gets translated from people that are involved in sword fights. They're fighting each other with swords and hacking each other to death for thousands of years while they're telling this story. The Crusades, all these different things that people did during that time, horrific things. And during that time, they're doing it, many of them, in defense of their God, in defense of their religion. They're motivating people by these books.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff. It's fascinating. But when you hear a guy like Tucker Carlson saying that what else do you know, bro? Say what you know. Like, what makes you say that? Because if that really is what it is, that would make sense to me why the government would keep that information from people. Because if we found out that people were essentially just a vessel of souls, and that we are essentially designed to give birth to artificial intelligence, and then that will be the end of us. So that's why they're not worried about nuclear war. That's why they're not worried about the environment. That's why they don't give a fuck about anything. This is all coming to an end.
We're there.
Yeah.
Like, we have it. We have it to the degree that people are already relying on it heavily.
Yeah.
Advertising agencies are relying on it to tell them how to cut a commercial, how present the logo needs to be in the commercial. Like, this is happening right now.
Oh, yeah.
This shit just appeared 3 years ago.
Right. Pull up Ezekiel's description of what he saw. This is one of the favorite descriptions from the Bible, from the Old Testament, about UFOs that people love to bring up. Because Ezekiel has this thing that he describes, and it's the most bizarre depiction. I saw an immense dust storm come from the north, an immense cloud with lightning flashing from it, a huge ball of fire glowing like bronze. Within the fire were what looked like 4 creatures vibrant with life. Each had the form of a human being, but each also had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were as sturdy and straight as columns, but their feet were hooved like those of a calf and sparkled with the fire like burnished bronze. On all 4 sides under their wings they had human hands. All 4 had faces and the wings touching one another. They turned neither one way nor the other. They went straight forward. Their faces looked like this. In front of a human face, on the right side, the face of a lion. On the left, the face of an ox. And in the back, the face of an eagle. So much for the faces. The wings were spread out with the tips of one pair touching the creature on either side. The other pair of wings covered its body. Each creature went straight ahead. Wherever the spirit went, they went. They didn't turn as they want. The 4 creatures looked like blazing fire or fiery torches. Tongues of fire shot back and forth between the creatures, and out of the fire, bolts of lightning. The creatures flashed back and forth like strikes of lightning. As I watched the 4 creatures, I saw something that looked like a wheel on the ground beside each of the 4-faced creatures. This is what the wheels looked like. They were identical wheels, sparkling like diamonds in the sun. They looked like they were wheels within wheels, like a gyroscope. They went in any of the 4 directions they faced, but straight, not veering off. The rims were immense, circled with eyes. When the living creatures went, the wheels went. When the living creatures lifted off, the wheels lifted off. Wherever the spirit went, they went, the wheels sticking right with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When the creatures went, the wheels went. When the creatures stopped, the wheels stopped. When the creatures lifted off, the wheels lifted off, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Over the heads of the living creatures was something like a dome, shimmering like the light, like a sky full of cut glass, vaulted over their heads. Under the dome, one set of wings was extended towards the other, with another set of wings covering their bodies. When they moved, I heard their wings. It was like the roar of a great waterfall, like the voice of the strong God, like the noise of a battlefield. When they stopped, they folded their wings. And then, as they stood with folded wings, there was a voice above the dome over their heads. Above the dome, there was something that looked like a throne, sky blue like a sapphire, with a human-like figure towering above the throne. From what I could see, from the waist up, he looked like burnished bronze, and from the waist down, like a blazing fire, brightness everywhere. The way a rainbow springs out of a sky on a rainy day, that's what it was like. It turned out to be the glory of God. Like, what the fuck, man?
I mean, to anybody that's done DMT or ayahuasca or really tripped on psychedelics, though, you read that and it feels sort of familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The glory of God.
Yeah, the glory of
and
God.
these visions of these beings.
And the fact that these things are like constantly changing their appearance.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about the DMT experience, is like, it's not a stationary, static experience. It's like constantly changing and moving in front of you. And to see something like that in the sky. And the fact that it's so noteworthy that they wrote it down in the fucking Bible.
Maybe he found some of those mushrooms, you know,
yeah,
in the cow shit.
Well, you know, there's a university in Israel, I think it's the University of Jerusalem, that theorized that the Moses experience of the burning bush was a DMT experience. And that what this is like, when you say Moses saw the burning bush, well, what kind of bush would burn that would give you a psychedelic experience? Well, the acacia tree. The acacia tree, which is very common to that area, is rich with DMT. And how do you psychoactively acquire DMT? You smoke it. Mm-hmm. So you're smoking this tree, this burning bush, and you're seeing God. And God has brought you 10 commandments of how to live life, which sounds like a lot of what you experience in the DMT experience. When you have that and you have these contact with the entities, they kind of give you guidelines of how to live.
If you enjoyed today's episode on JRE Plus, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.